Ricky, where are you now? When I called, my husband Ricky said he was at work, but at that time, he was in a hospital corridor. I witnessed him attending the birth of a woman I didn't know.
I'm busy now, so I'm hanging up,
Ricky said hurriedly, and hung up the phone unilaterally, not knowing I was watching, and walked down the corridor laughing. Who would have thought your dad would do such a thing? I gently stroked my belly, and then I vowed revenge on Ricky, with whom I was supposed to raise our child together. I am Sherry, 34 years old. I met Ricky, my husband, at work 6 years ago and got married. It took us 5 years into our marriage to finally have a long-awaited child, and I was supposed to be full of happiness. Ricky was a very kind and wonderful person at the beginning of our marriage. At first, since both of us were working, we shared household chores and helped each other. But after a few years, I realized that I was the only one doing them. No matter how many times I pointed it out, he would do the chores for a while, but then he would stop again. Eventually, I realized it was faster to do it myself than to ask him. So I stopped relying on him, and our relationship gradually became like roommates. But I, wanting children, tried to be kinder to him. And finally, we were blessed with a child. Yet when I told Ricky about the pregnancy, his face looked complicated.
A child now?
Are you not happy?
You're 34, you know. Do you understand?
Pregnancy in your 30s isn't rare these days. Stop talking like that.
Also, I won't be at the birth.
Why not?
I don't like that kind of thing. Spare me. And I won't change diapers after the baby is born.
Ricky said this dismissively and left his seat. Still, I believed that once the baby was born, Ricky would surely change as a father. But things didn't go as planned. Ricky showed no interest in the ultrasound photos I brought from each checkup. Instead, when morning sickness made it hard for me to cook, he started complaining.
Ugh. Instant food again today? This is the worst.
I'm feeling sick.
Try being in my shoes, seeing your miserable face every day. If it's so hard, you should just give up on the baby.
What?
I didn't ask you to have it, and if you slack off on cooking and cleaning, and then you vomit in front of me, it's the worst.
He looked at me as if I were something dirty and left to eat out. I, left behind, couldn't even get up due to the nausea from morning sickness, and cried in bed from sadness. Why did this happen? Ricky used to look forward to having children. My pregnancy, which should have been a joy, was starting to feel like a burden. Should I really have this child in this situation? The thought of giving up on the baby, as Ricky said, crossed my mind for a moment. Then, I felt movement in my belly. Was that? When I stroked my belly, there was movement again. Could it be the baby's movements? I was suddenly overjoyed to communicate with a child I had only seen in ultrasound photos. Right, Mommy has to do her best. As I spoke to my belly, I got a response from inside. It was no time for tears. I had to be strong as a mother. After that, Ricky started to be away on business trips more often. That morning, too, he suddenly said he would be away for a week from tomorrow. Weren't you on a business trip for 5 days last week? Why so often?
I'm busy with work. Don't complain.
Ricky wouldn't even look me in the eyes. Until last year, he had only one 2-day training trip per year. There's definitely something wrong. He hasn't changed departments. I contacted a friend from my company who still works with Ricky to discreetly ask, and it turned out the business trips were a lie. But I couldn't find out anything more. Wondering if there was any clue, I tried to look at his mobile phone while he was in the bath, but I couldn't open it because I didn't know the password. What should I do? Hiring a detective agency costs a lot. Yet I don't want to just go through with the birth like this. I was spending my days feeling unsettled when I suddenly got a call from my sister Laura for the first time in a year. Sherry, long time no see. How are you? My 3 years younger sister Laura had always been free-spirited. Since childhood, she acted as if the world revolved around her, always taking my toys and stationery, which was really annoying. Ever since I started working, she repeatedly borrowed money and never paid back. She did the same to our parents and got reprimanded often, but she never seemed to care. That changed a year and a half ago when she fell for Francois, a French-American guy who was a friend of mine. She left saying she was going abroad with him and then stopped contacting us. Hey, where are you now? I'm in America, but I can't tell you where because it's personal information. What's that about? What happened to Francois? I dumped that just a pretty face guy. Don't even mention his name. I don't want to hear it. Again, shouldn't you stop changing boyfriends like that? Mom and Dad are worried. Have you contacted them? Stop nagging. I'll only get lectured if I talk to the parents. Besides, can you lend me some money? That's what you ask after a year? I still haven't gotten back the $3,000 I lent you before. Did I borrow that? I forgot. I couldn't help but sigh at her unchanged attitude as Laura laughed carelessly on the other end of the phone. Anyway, how have you been, Sherry? How? What do you mean? Are you still married? Of course. I'm about to have a baby soon. Really? Poor child of Sherry. What do you mean by that? Nothing. Laura said something meaningful and then suddenly hung up. What was that about? Typical self-centered Laura. But knowing that getting involved with her never leads to anything good, I didn't bother calling her back. I just told our parents that she was in America, and my mother Vivian was angry, wondering what a 30-year-old is doing. Months passed, and my belly, heavily pregnant, had grown considerably. Ricky had said he was on a 10-day business trip and was away from home. I was preparing for the birth alone, feeling empty. On the day of my last prenatal checkup, I decided to take a look at the maternity ward. As I was passing by a room, I heard a man encouraging his wife, struggling with labor pains. "I'll rub your back," he said kindly. "You're doing great. Do you want some water?" I wish Ricky could be here for me. I stopped in front of the room, envious. I could hear the couple talking between contractions. "Laura's child will surely be cute." Of course. Much prettier than Sherry's child. Hearing those words, it felt as if cold water was poured on me, shaking all over. Laura? Sherry's child? Wait a minute. The man's voice sounded like Ricky's. The nameplate at the room entrance showed Laura's name. Through the curtain gap, I could see Ricky's profile. No way. I covered my mouth to stop myself from screaming and hurried away from the room. In the hospital's lounge, I sat stunned for a while. I guessed from Ricky's behavior that he was having an affair, but I had always believed that he would change his mind once he had his own child. I had suspected Ricky of cheating, but never imagined it involved Laura and a child. Why? How? As these thoughts repeated in my head, a faint hope of being mistaken arose. I approached the room again and called Ricky. The ringing of the phone call sounded, and after a while, Ricky came out of the room, clutching his mobile phone. Where are you now?
I'm at work now. I'm busy, so I'm hanging up.
Ricky, right in front of me, ended the call unilaterally and went back into the room. It was undoubtedly my husband, and the other person was my sister. As soon as I reconfirmed that fact, anger surged from the pit of my stomach. I won't let this go. I'll make sure you regret this. Then I made a call to a certain place. 3 days later, having prepared everything, I was busy calling around since the morning. The baby is born, so please come to the hospital. Yes, my due date is next month, but the baby is already here. In addition to my in-laws and my parents, I also contacted relatives and former colleagues from work, asking them to see the baby, and everyone promised to come, happy for the celebration. At the appointed time in the hospital's lounge, about 10 people had gathered, all surprised to see my still large belly. As if speaking on behalf of everyone there, my mother Vivian asked, Sherry, wasn't your baby born? Why is your belly still big? The baby is indeed born. Just come to the room, please. I had already checked that my sister Laura's room was a private one and took the relatives with me. Of course, I had also checked that Ricky would be there at this time. The relatives looked puzzled, followed me. Here we are, everyone.
Why is Mom here?
What? Why are my parents here, too? Ricky and Laura, seeing the relatives, panicked and instinctively held hands. Both sets of parents seeing this were shocked. Why is Laura here? What does this mean about the baby? The first to speak in this chaotic situation was my level-headed mother. Why are Ricky and Laura together? Explain this. Slowly, the others began to understand the situation and started whispering among themselves. Ricky and Laura hastily let go of their hands, trying to act like strangers, but it was too late. Sherry, when you said the baby was born, you meant these two's baby. Well, something like that. Ricky and Laura were having an affair. How could you, Laura? And you, Ricky, are Sherry's husband. The two were met with cold stares from everyone, and they shrunk back, looking down. But soon, Ricky glared at me.
Sherry, how did you find out about this? And calling all the relatives. That's terrible.
Right, Sherry's always been mean like that. Laura joined in blaming me. Talking nonsense without addressing your own actions. Ricky, you are my husband, but you are happier about the child with Laura than your own child about to be born.
That's right. Since Laura got pregnant a year ago, I've been looking forward to this child. And then you had to go and get pregnant too. What a nuisance.
So let's divorce.
That's what I want.
Ricky, with a smug look, signed the divorce papers I presented in front of the relatives.
Now we're strangers. You can't complain about anything I do.
Right, but I'll be claiming $30,000 in compensation and $1,500 a month in child support. The lawyer is already arranged, so please cooperate. I pulled out an envelope from the lawyer's office with the claim from my bag, and Ricky suddenly paled. It's only fair, right? You didn't think you would be claimed, did you?
You're the worst, Sherry. Shouldn't you wish for your sister's happiness and not do this?
I thought it best to teach her the harshness of society by being thorough. Voices of agreement rose from the relatives around us. Father-in-law shouted,
Ricky, enough, shameful.
And Ricky hung his head in defeat. I decided to push Ricky further down. I guess you don't know, so I'll tell you. Laura is married.
What?
I pulled out a copy of Laura's international marriage certificate from my bag and showed it to Ricky and the relatives. Everyone peered in with interest.
I didn't hear she was married. What's this, Laura?
Didn't I mention it?
You said you broke up with that guy and came back from abroad.
Yeah, I dumped Francois. He was handsome but too picky, and nagging about cleaning and laundry. It was a bit too much trouble.
Dumped?
Ricky stared at Laura, who was nonchalantly talking as if she had just thrown out bulky trash. Lorna came back to America with Francois's savings after growing tired of him, so there were no divorce procedures or anything.
What?
Laura seemed very surprised that I knew about this. That's why I decided to invite another guest to the room. Francois. Actually, when I found out about the two of them 3 days ago, the first person I called was Francois. Francois was originally a friend of mine. Laura, who fell for the stylish and handsome Francois, aggressively pursued him. Fed up, he returned to France, and Laura followed him. Francois had told me that she forced a fait accompli and dragged him into marriage, but he also said he wanted to cherish Laura, who loved him so much. Yet within half a year, I received a message that she had disappeared. I kept getting calls from Francois asking about Laura's whereabouts. And the baby in your belly is Francois's child, isn't it? When Francois, who had been looking for his wife, found Laura, he hugged her and started crying. Laura turned pale, and Ricky was utterly confused.
It's not my child.
Of course not. She took the money and ran right after confirming her pregnancy in France.
Why? What do you mean?
I got tired of Francois and came back to America, but I couldn't live here, so I thought Ricky would be easy to deceive.
You said you loved me.
Yeah, I loved your high salary. Ricky seemed completely shocked and collapsed weakly to the floor. Laura has always been like this. I warned you when you married her, but you never listened and got deceived. He looked at me with the eyes of an abandoned puppy.
Sherry, I'm sorry. I was just deceived by her. I'll be there for the birth.
What are you talking about now? You just signed the divorce papers. It's creepy to have a stranger at the birth.
Don't say that.
As he was trying to cling to me again, I pushed him away and told Laura. And you might be sued by Francois. Why? Taking a child out of the country without the other parent's permission is against the Hague Convention, even if it's the mother. The Hague Convention stipulates that children in international marriages cannot be taken out of the country without the permission of the parent with parental authority, even if it is the mother. I don't know if it applies to an unborn child, but since you took the money as well, it seems fair. Francois started ranting in French, and Laura, who hardly speaks French, tried to respond in broken sentences, almost incomprehensible. Sherry, you speak French, right? Tell Francois I didn't mean any harm. Ask him to drop the lawsuit. He's already filed a report with the French police, so it's unlikely. Oh, so you'll be taken back to France and arrested. No, please help me. The relatives listening to our conversation were speechless in disbelief. Laura and Ricky, enough. Take responsibility for your actions. Sherry, forget these terrible people and come back home. You have an important job as a mother ahead of you. We'll take care of you. Mom, thank you. I'll be depending on you for a while. I need help too, Laura cried, but it was sternly reprimanded by the mother and relatives, finally quieting down. Don't ever show up in front of me again, both of you. I left my lawyer's card, said goodbye to the relatives, and left the room. Later, Mom told me that the relatives lectured them for about 6 hours. In the meantime, Francois kept speaking in French, creating an uncontrollable situation. Ricky eventually resigned from his job due to the rumors spread by the colleagues I had invited. Now shunned by his in-laws and struggling to find work, moving between internet cafes, Laura was taken back to France with the child, where she faced a lawsuit. Francois won custody of the child and is now raising him. I wonder how Laura, with little French and no money, is managing in France. I just hope she doesn't bring shame to Americans. I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. I'm currently relying on my family, but I plan to return to work soon and work hard for my daughter. I'll be a strong mother for my precious child.